Picture a massive concrete campus on the edge of a city, power lines humming overhead, cooling towers pushing steam into the night sky. Inside, rows and rows of glowing racks are doing one thing around the clock, thinking for the entire internet. These are the new AI factories, and in the next 12 months, what happens inside them will quietly decide whose products you use, which startups survive, and even how you do your job. We are past the hype phase. The gold rush has changed, and the rules for who wins in AI have just been rewritten. On a live stream called Forward Future Live, leaders from Google DeepMind, Groq, Emergence Capital, and workflow automation startup Augment laid out AI's near future like operators, not futurists. No vague talk about artificial general intelligence timelines. Instead, they obsessed over cost per query, latency in milliseconds, and whether a chief financial officer will sign a multi-year contract or just a cute pilot. Because here is the shift almost nobody outside the room has noticed yet. The race is no longer who has the biggest model. It is who can deliver intelligence at the lowest cost with the least friction at global scale. So what exactly is this new AI economy they are talking about? Think less research lab, more industrial plant. Matthew Berman, the host, calls them AI factories. Hyperscale data centers, on-prem clusters, and edge deployments all tuned for nonstop inference, not just training. They run like manufacturing lines with supply chains for chips and power, standardized pipelines for data and fine-tuning, and service-level agreements measured in milliseconds and nines of uptime. Here is the pattern break. Enterprises now ask about compliance acronyms and vendor lock-in before they even ask how many parameters a model has. Berman's panel maps this new world into 4 pillars. Hardware, represented by Groq's Sunny Madra, pushing ultra-low latency language processing units. Models, represented by Google DeepMind's Logan Kilpatrick, bringing Gemini and Google's agent roadmap. Capital through Joseph Floyd at Emergence, speaking for growth stage software as a service. And agents via Guy Gur-Ari at Augment, who is wiring models into real company workflows. Each pillar solves a different part of one brutal question. Can all 4 layers integrate tightly enough that a chief financial officer feels safe betting real budget on them in 2026? Let us start with the most underrated pillar, speed. Sunny Madra argues that by 2026, most AI dollars will go into inference, not training, because that is where you actually feel the product. A huge 300 billion parameter model that pauses for 3 seconds loses to a smaller, cheaper one that answers in a tenth of a second. Traditional graphics processing unit stacks are like sports cars stuck in rush hour. Fast on paper, but jittery in practice. Token times jump from 50 milliseconds to 400, and that kills anything that is supposed to feel like live conversation. Groq's language processing unit architecture flips that story. Instead of general-purpose chips juggling thousands of threads, Groq runs a deterministic, token-by-token pipeline with fixed execution paths. That means you can literally quote something like 10 milliseconds per token under load and actually hit it. Developers can design around guarantees, not averages. And here is the part most people miss. When cost per token drops by 10 to 100 times, and latency becomes boringly predictable, entire product categories suddenly become viable that were science fiction last year. Imagine a voice agent that listens, reasons, and replies in under 150 milliseconds. Your brain stops noticing the machine and just hears a person. Or think about complex chain of thought reasoning where the model thinks through hundreds or thousands of internal tokens before answering you. Today, that is slow and expensive. On a fast inference fabric, it becomes cheap background computation. In a minute, we will talk about how that changes your job, but first, there is a deeper shift. The winning stack is no longer best model wins. It is good enough model on blisteringly fast, ultra-cheap hardware. On top of that hardware, Google DeepMind is aiming at something far more personal than a chat box. Logan Kilpatrick describes Gemini evolving into a persistent personal intelligence that actually lives across your life. Not just answering prompts, but sitting inside Gmail, Calendar, Drive, Docs, and Chrome, constantly reading signals and anticipating what you need. Picture waking up to an auto briefing every morning. The key emails you should answer, meetings that need rescheduling, documents you must read, and even news relevant to your current projects, all summarized for you before you touch a keyboard. To make that real, Google has to wire Gemini directly into your personal graph at massive scale. That means application programming interfaces that expose slices of your messages, events, tasks, and browsing history, but with strict scoping and revocation for every app that touches it. Developers will demand three core building blocks. First, fine-grained permissions, like read calendar only, no email. Second, verifiable logs of every agent action and data access. Third, sandboxed execution, so an agent cannot quietly exfiltrate your data. The stakes here are huge because one misbehaving agent on 3 billion Chrome installs is not a bug. It is a global incident. And there is another tension Google cannot ignore. If Gemini summarizes everything inside Search, Android, and Chrome, publishers lose page views, ad impressions, and direct relationships with you. Sunderpitch AI has already hinted at this collision course. To avoid detonating the open web, Google will have to treat publishers as first-class players in the agent economy, not just content to scrape. That could look like structured agent feeds, revenue sharing on AI-generated answers, and explicit integration hooks so sites can tell agents how to use their content. In other words, your future personal intelligence will not just be about you. It will be a negotiation between you, platforms, and content owners. While Google and Groq build the stack, venture capitalists are ruthlessly deciding who gets funded to use it. Joseph Floyd from Emergence Capital says the honeymoon for AI-powered pitch decks is over. The first question now is brutally simple. Does this move a profit and loss line item, or is it just a slick demo wrapped around someone else's application programming interface? Investors are tearing into unit economics. They want to see how AI changes customer acquisition cost, gross margin, or expansion revenue, not vague claims about productivity. Here is where it gets very real for founders. If you say your sales co-pilot boosts outreach, Floyd wants proof that outbound conversion rates climb 20 to 30%, or that reps handle 2 to 3 times more accounts without burning out. If you promise automation, he expects fewer support tickets per customer, faster resolution times, or lower headcount per $1 million of revenue, not just higher cloud bills. And defensibility has quietly become the new obsession. With Gemini, GPT 4.1 Claude, and open weight models everywhere, raw model access is no longer a moat. Everyone can call the same models for pennies. So where do real moats come from now? Floyd points to 3 assets: proprietary or hard-to-replicate data, unique, high-friction workflows deeply wired into operations, and distribution advantages like embedded partnerships or existing software footprints. Proprietary data means more than a bucket of logs. It is labeled workflows, outcome data, and customer-specific ontologies that let your models learn patterns no public model sees. When that is tied to a workflow that runs approvals, shipping, billing, or forecasting, ripping you out becomes almost impossible without breaking the business. Guy Gur-Ari at Augment shows what this looks like on the ground. Forget science fiction agents that run your entire life. His team builds ones that quietly run your inbox and dashboards. They wire language model-powered agents straight into Gmail, Salesforce, Jira, Notion, and internal tools. The mission is simple but brutal. Shave minutes off thousands of tiny tasks until whole roles start to look different. Augment's customers do not start with moonshots. They start with email triage. Agents read inbound threads, classify intent, draft responses, and route messages to the right human or system. Instead of one godlike super agent, Gur-Ari argues for a swarm of narrow, dependable workers. One agent specializes in weekly pipeline reports. Another compiles customer health scores. A third reconciles billing discrepancies. Each might save only 5 to 10 minutes per person per day, but across 5,000 employees that compounds into millions of dollars in productivity. And here is the real filter. These agents only get deployed when they are reliable, secure, and auditable. In finance, healthcare, or big software, no audit trail means no deployment, no matter how magical the demo looks. Behind all of this sits the physical reality almost nobody talks about. AI now runs on concrete, copper, and cooling towers. Hyperscalers are racing to build dedicated AI factories, single campuses drawing more than 500 megawatts just to keep up with model upgrades and exploding inference demand. Microsoft has reportedly committed over $100 billion to new infrastructure, with Google and Amazon not far behind. Inside these buildings, a zoo of accelerators compete. NVIDIA, AMD, and custom chips like Trainium, Inferentia, and Google TPU v5 all fight for their place in the stack. But there is a cost. AI data centers already consume an estimated 2 to 3% of global electricity, with some projections pushing toward 4 to 6% by 2030. Local utilities in hubs like Northern Virginia and Dublin are delaying new hookups because grids cannot keep up. Community groups push moratoriums. Regulators scrutinize water usage for cooling. Governments ask why chatbots should compete with housing and transit for scarce electrons. Performance per watt stops being a nice to have. It becomes survival math for the entire industry. Put all of this together, and you can see the real battleground. It is shifting from individual models to full ecosystems. Hardware that crushes inference cost and latency. Models that are powerful but controllable. Capital that insists on real profit and loss impact. Agents that live inside workflows and earn trust with logs and guardrails. The question for 2026 is not, will AI get smarter? It already is. The question is, who can align these four layers tightly enough that the next wave of AI products feel instant, cheap, and indispensable to both you and your chief financial officer? So what does this mean for you, sitting at your desk today? Over the next 12 months, expect more of your daily tools to quietly gain agents under the hood. Your inbox will triage itself. Your customer relationship system will update